Hi, I'm Ingrid Pyka with IBP Strategies, and today I'm very excited about a very special guest that I have for Business as Unusual, where we keep our business going and we understand the impacts that are happening despite the strange things that are happening right now. So I have today Mr. Justin Vaughn, attorney at law at Layoff GPM, is a national business firm, law firm, and he specializes in business law with a heavy emphasis here in Colorado, although they also work on international law. So we are talking today about the specifics, not only as a business owner, we're also talking about how you are going to be impacted as an employee and what resources are available as the business owner, as well as the employee. And yes, we will also cover entrepreneurs and solopreneurs, self-employed, how you also have relief and what some of the opportunities may lay ahead. Justin, thank you and welcome.
Ingrid, thank you.
So I kind of outlined, we were talking about the different factions within the business communities. We've got the ownerships of the businesses. We also have the employees and team members. And then again, the outliers, which actually are a large percentage of the American businesses, the entrepreneur and solopreneur. So let's start initially with the business owners. I know like today I was on a call with U.S. Senator Cory Gardner, where he talked a lot about the constantly evolving changes and the current ideas of what's happening. Justin, what do you feel would be the first thing that a business owner really needs to consider at this time of crisis during the COVID-19 changes that are happening?
Well, we have Ingrid, thank you. That's a great question. We have business owners who are falling into a few categories. And everyone is facing situations that no one had anticipated nor prepared for. So we have businesses that are thriving, we have businesses that are struggling, and we have some businesses that are closed. And each of those face somewhat different issues. The businesses that are thriving need to know what's going on in the world and need to know what legislation is coming out and what obligations are going to be applicable. Businesses who are struggling generally need to find those resources where funding is coming out through stimulus, through state activities, through local activities. And the businesses that are closed need to know not only what are my options for funding, but what are my options when this subsides? How will I get back on my feet? And what are the resources to be able to do that? So I'm thrilled to be able to address those issues with you today. And I thank you for the opportunity to break that out and describe some of those. Where would you like to start?
Well, I appreciate your expertise. So let's start with respect to something of what are they going to do with their payroll and their employees? What are they planning on there? What are their options?
Yeah, for payroll expenses, there are funding options that are available, and that's, I think, at the forefront of everyone's mind with the stimulus package. There is a paycheck protection program that is in place through the SBA, and that's part of the CARES Act. So many are turning to that. We now have online applications as an option. We have state SBA agencies that people can turn to. And that's going to help fund particularly payroll, but it also can cover other overhead that are permitted by that act. Additional funding can come through economic injury disaster loans or EID loans. Those loans are also available for emergency purposes. In that situation, it's really the second and third categories. You have to show that there's some injury to your business. This certainly is considered a disaster with what's going on, so it meets that criteria. And individuals as well can apply for that through online mechanisms or reach out to the local SBA authorities. There are short-term loans, emergency loans that are also available in the interim. Those go up to $25,000, and those have been made available through the SBA, particularly here in Colorado, but also through state agencies, other parts of the country. So that combined with tax credit issues that everyone should be looking at and discussing with their CPA. There are tax credit issues to the extent people have to pay for leave or pay for other, are you still there?
I'm
Did I
still
lose
here.
you? Okay.
Go ahead.
To pay for leave or to pay for FMLA that's covered under the recent Families First Act. Those, they can find certain tax credits that also help with those payroll obligations.
Right. Now, there is a differentiation between small business versus greater than 500 employees, right?
Right. Right. You have to be in that small business category, and small businesses are truly the backbone. I know we hear that. I know it's a cliche, but small businesses in America account for half of the businesses and 2/3 of new employment. So, you know, that's critically important. And yes, under the CARES Act, it's defined as a business that is 500 employees or fewer. Unlike other FMLA type provisions, it doesn't stop at 50. It doesn't have that threshold of 50 and up. It actually goes down to any number of employees. The CARES Act does allow an exclusion from, or excuse me, the Family First Act does allow an exclusion for companies that would struggle if somebody took leave or fall into certain industry category or first responder categories. But you have to apply for that. The Department of Labor has to approve that. So what we're looking at right now is a situation where it really applies to, for the Families First, it applies for everybody 500 and below.
So it sounds like the government is really pitching in to support businesses as a whole and as an entity. In fact, my understanding is that in certain cases, when the funds that are coming in under the payroll protection, that can translate from a loan into a grant as well. Is that true? Yeah,
there are certain provisions that allow, if you take out those loans, that allow for a forbearance of payments, certain things that become a credit. So there is that option under the CARES Act. One of those, for example, is that if you are applying for an EID loan and you don't, and you need an emergency amount of money, you can get up to $10,000 on an expedited basis within a few days. And whether your loan is granted or not, you get to keep that money. At least that's the reading and interpretation of the Act. Again, so many of these things are changing daily. So much is subject to Department of Labor regulations that we're still waiting for, IRS regulations that we're still waiting for, but that's the current interpretation. So, you know, the best option is really to seek out those resources and communicate with the SBA if you're in need of funds. Review those resources, look at the Department of Labor instructions with regard to paid leave and FMLA as applicable under the Family First Act. Just make sure that you're exploring those options fully as it would apply to your business.
A lot of information packed in there. So I'm hearing, for a business owner's perspective, rely on the Small Business Administration, the SBA, for many opportunities in assisting your company moving forward, bridging this gap for right now, and then the Department of Labor. So,
right.
So I'd like to switch the hat for the moment. We were just emphasizing and talking about the owners of the business and helping provide with management. Flipping it on the other side for the employees. First of all, Justin, can you tell us a little more what differentiates when a company puts their employees on furlough versus laying them off, and at some point even what termination, which may not apply as much into the COVID-19 component, but just so that the employees have an understanding of the difference.
Sure, and oftentimes furlough and laid off are used interchangeably. That's not necessarily from a legal perspective technically accurate, but we know people use those terms fairly loosely, but generally speaking, and in most circles, furlough is a short-term release from employment with the intention that once this episode is over, their employment is protected and they will return. Oftentimes, employers will, in fact, keep benefits intact, keep health insurance benefits, retirement benefits, those types of things, keep those programs going for furloughed workers. They don't necessarily have to, but oftentimes they do. Again, with the idea that they're going to come back to an open position that is held specifically for that furloughed individual. A layoff is a different type of perspective where somebody is being let go. It's anticipated to be long-term, and there is no guarantee that they will return for any type of employment. And oftentimes the intention is that they will not. So those are, that's the description and picture of what a layoff would look like. Obviously, there's also a similar category of somebody who's terminated from employment, and that's just let go with a complete break. The layoffs are generally groups of people or categories of people, and is more widespread. A termination is more specific to an individual, but we're looking at all three of those things happening right now on a widespread basis.
Yeah. So what is your biggest advice for employees that are laid off at the moment? And then we'll talk about furlough as well. But someone laid off due to the COVID-19, what are some advantages or some resources for them as they're struggling through the financial impact?
Well, yes, and certainly they should reach out to the unemployment office and explore those benefits. Again, that's something that is affected now by both state law and is unique in each state, and specific to Colorado, is unique to Colorado, but now also impacted by federal law. So unemployment benefits are expanded. It's expanded to 13 weeks rather than the applicable state period of time. It's expanded an additional 13 weeks. It's expanded to independent contractors and those who are self-employed. It's just grown through the federal program in coordination with the state. But the best approach is just to reach out and find out what benefits are available. The benefits that are available today might be very different next week, next month, a few months down the road. And they need to find out what those answers are. Certainly, it's a benefit to go ahead and apply. There's no downside to it, and determine what benefits you'll be eligible for.
Yeah, no, sound advice there. We're seeing in March, there's already over 10 million that have applied for unemployment. And when you look at the Great Depression of the 20s, the total estimated unemployment during that time was 15 million. So we're already making some pretty frightening closure to that gap. And at this point, the hope obviously is that everyone is providing, getting those resources and having access to. There are definitely some challenges with the internet and getting it all online, but I'm wishing all of you the best in that garnering of supporting your household.
Yeah, so, and even for people who are furloughed, who are told you're going to come back, April 15th, you're going to come back April 30th. There's no guarantee of that. So, apply for the benefits, determine what you're eligible for, and then if things turn out better than anticipated, that's a good outcome. Yeah. But prepare for the worst and protect yourself and prepare for providing for you and your family. Yeah. And take whatever advantage of it you can. Take the tax breaks. We have an extension for tax filings. Take advantage of that. Unless you're getting a refund, in which case go ahead and do it early.
What you need. No, I get it. There is debate on what is truly an essential business and or worker in times here. And I know that goes far beyond our conversation here. Justin, what advice would you have for an employee at this point when if they're being asked to come back to work and they're feeling it's not quite the right safety factor for them, or that they need to stay at home because of family medical concerns or such, what tips do you have for an employee on that aspect?
Yeah, that's a great question, but it's hard to answer because it depends on each situation. Mm-hmm. And every situation is going to be different when you're faced with those types of issues. If an employee is asked to return, obviously there needs to be open communication, and that goes without saying. But also an employee who an employer considers is an exception to stay-at-home or quarantine rules, it has to recognize that if there is a disagreement, they need to first communicate that, but they cannot be obligated to do something that is illegal. Under Colorado stay-at-home provisions, there are criminal sanctions associated with that, which means an employer cannot compel an employee to engage in something that would violate those terms. Now, those terms include a gray area. So it's going to be difficult on a case-by-case basis to delineate, here's what would violate, the terms of the stay-at-home provisions, here's what would not. You certainly don't want to be on the wrong side of that dispute. Ultimately, an employee, of course, always has the right to quit, to terminate their employment. They also have the right to comply with the law. They have the right to report complaints, but at that point, now it's really a nasty situation if they're reporting what they consider to be illegal conduct against their employer. So it's tough to recommend that employees undertake that alternative because I always prefer to see things worked out and resolved. But employees do have those types of options and protections available to them.
Yeah, I'm very relieved to hear that word communication come up several times in your recommendations. When I'm working with teams, and even now during this very bizarre situation where teams are uncertain what's happening, that communication and development of new policies and procedures and transmitting them to everyone on board and helping the training of the new techniques of what are we doing now versus before, and what are the other team members expected to do. It's been a blessing as well to see the community coming in and helping, for example, with the essential workers in the health field, providing masks, and there are massive amounts of donations for the fabrics and for people that are sewing them and creating them and then distributing them. So again, an immense communication kudos to our entire America, United States, for those that are still bonding together with that's what we're built on.
You bet. And the companies that are thriving also have a common communication component that we've seen. Mm-hmm. They've set up an executive leadership team or focal point to both gather information, to convey positive information and policy changes, whether it be the notice under the Family First Act, whether it be policy changes for cleaning protocols, travel, all those types of things. But they're communicating policy changes to their employees and communicating positive messages to their employees. They also provide a conduit in the other direction, which is employee reporting of any kind of symptoms, any type of exposure, any concerns, making sure everybody follows social distancing and other CDC protocols. So the employers, the companies that are doing it the best, have that type of a structure, and the communication is free-flowing, it's abundant, and people are comfortable with the process and what they need to do. Exactly.
Yeah, I love it. And the risk mitigation, that's always there, and understanding the change management. So
and if I may, for employers also, when you set up that leadership structure and that communication structure, you also need to set up a succession component to that. We've had companies that have had a CEO who was the focal point of that communication conduit. The CEO comes down with the virus, and now you have a gap. So for business owners out there, they need to think through those alternatives. They need to think 2 months down the road, 6 months down the road, a year down the road, prepare for the worst and set up the right structures, and communication is so critical, but set up the right entire structures to monitor and make changes based on legal changes, to take care of your employees, to make sure you're servicing your contracts, to explore contract options and insurance options. If you are struggling, if you can't perform, what are your contractual options there? If you have a work interruption, if you have business interruption, what are your insurance coverages? So all of those types of things are important issues as well.
Very good points of the whole gamut of everything, and especially with evolution. When I'm working with business owners and teams and how to develop the goals and the path to move forward, one of the things that we always stress is be prepared for when things are not so good, whether it be economically or whether your market is evolving and shifting. If a competitor comes up, well, obviously none of us ever predicted something like this where it's an overall shutdown. But I like how you said, Justin, that it's so important, not just for now, also proacting in advance next week, next month. It's way beyond April 30th. It's June 30th. It's September. It's next year. What happens if this goes again? What happens if there's a member that does come down ill, as you had mentioned? So good point.
Yeah.
I know
well, and particularly planning for if there's another virus 2 years down the road, 10 years down the road, you know, what does it look like if we go back to our current situation, and how do we do it better?
Yep, exactly. So we're getting down on our time here, but there is something else that I did want to cover. I wanted to also talk a little bit about the solopreneurs, those entrepreneurs, the ones that are self-employed and that may not, in the normal circumstances, be able to take advantage of unemployment, or normally if they had a business that's going on and been around for a couple of years, they can take advantage of certain SBA loans or such. But with the COVID-19 changes that have come down with the CARE Acts and such, Justin, what is there to protect the current losses that we're seeing in this entrepreneurial world for the self-employed?
Yeah, we have certain things that have always been a recommendation to the self-employed, and some of those things we've touched on. You know, looking at what does your insurance cover, what do your contracts say about your performance? Those types of things are just generally true for everybody. But there really are 4 unique things that have changed for people who are self-employed, and one of which we touched upon, which is self-employed people can now apply for unemployment under the current federal law that was issued. You know, obviously that's a big change. There's tax credits now under the Family First Act for self-employed individuals that I really want them to talk to their CPA and determine, you know, what those credits would look like and whether they're eligible. Interestingly, also under Family First, you can get paid leave. Which is an interesting situation. You're eligible for, and this overlaps with the credits issue, you're eligible to take that just as though you had leave. Of course, you have to be sick or caring for somebody or otherwise qualify under that. But you get the credits that are associated with that. And
on this, Justin,
okay.
Does this work for someone that may be a legal entity of a sole proprietor or an S Corp or an LLC? Is this across the board?
Yes. Yeah, it would apply to all of them, including all of those categories.
Another added, so people are aware it's very different than in the norm.
Right, and the other would be the ability to apply for the SBA loans under the EID category. If you're self-employed, you are eligible for that. You still have to obviously meet those threshold requirements. You have to show that you have losses that are attributable to the circumstances. But then you're eligible for that loan to help you carry through pursuant to those loan terms. So for those who are self-employed, it's worth looking into.
Great stuff. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about in the last few minutes that we have is we are, many of America and around the world are at this point stuck at home, which gives a lot more time to think about some of those ideas that have been gurgling and mushing through the brains of, wow, if I had time, I would. And some of this may be whether it's collecting the thoughts and writing a book, or starting to build the business structure and the strategy and a true business plan for a new business, a new opportunity, and getting a kind of a heads up on something versus where you didn't have that time to plan and to create. And as a business consultant, I want to encourage those of you that have that coming up and some other ideas to truly put that to the desk. Roll up your sleeve and start doing the finessing and planning and creating that, despite what's happening now and in lieu of happening now, when things normalize, whatever that may be, what in your plan can you implement and strategize to become a new you, become a new business? Justin and I were talking just a little bit before the recording here, and there is one component that I want to make sure that Justin covers, if you can cover, regarding the loans of new businesses, so that you are aware as you're creating your strategies, this is something to keep in mind.
Yeah, well, and a lot of people out there, I hope, are thinking about being self-employed, starting up a business. This is a great opportunity for our country to do that, but they need to understand the lay of the landscape that they're in. Certainly, it's an opportunity to think of businesses that would help people, that would serve people, that would thrive under the situation that we're currently in. But in terms of the CARES Act itself, because there are establishment dates, you had to have been established by, for one category of loan, it's a date in February, for another, it's a date in January. You're not going to be able to create a new business and necessarily use the CARES Act to fund it. Nor would you necessarily be able to use other categories of SBA. We could certainly check, but generally the SBA loans are applicable if you're if you're purchasing an established business. So one of the things you might want to do is look at businesses that are for sale out there, whether you're on Biz by Sell, talking to a broker, talking to an investment banker, whatever it might be. Look for a business that's out there that's already established, that would be appealing to you, that you would like to do. And there are options of doing that. And there may be people looking to retire who recognize the current market we're in, and you get a really good price on the purchase of a business under those circumstances. The other is to just launch it with savings, with angel investors. Right now, private equity, venture capital has a significant amount of what people call dry powder. They have a lot of funds available. They are not necessarily eager to invest in the market while it's going up and down. But if somebody has the right idea and you can be matched with the right angel investor, then you can still find funding out there. There is still money available, and opportunities are out there to fund your project under those types of circumstances. It's a great opportunity now to take that extra time at home. You're saving time on the commute anyway. To take that extra little bit of time and commit that to your business plan, your design, your marketing plan, your product, your service, whatever it might be. Really develop that, and then reach out to the right people. Reach out to me, to Ingrid, whoever can connect you with the right person, and really explore that opportunity, get that funding, and launch your business.
Great advice, great advice. So here we are. We have covered a ton of information. There are many resources and links that through a video format would be very difficult for us to provide you with that link. Justin is sharing a one sheet that summarizes much of what he talked about, has direct links over to these resources for business owners and employees. And if you are interested in that, go ahead and contact myself or Justin so that we can get a copy of it straight to you. Justin, if someone wants to touch base with you and get more information, what's the best way to reach you?
They can do one of two things. They can email me at justin.vaughn@lathrop.gpm.com. That's LATHROP.GPM.com. Or they're welcome to call me directly, 720-288-1870.
Fantastic. And if you'd like to reach me and have other questions on your strategies and where else, or if you have great advice, and you're welcome to reach me. Again, I'm Ingrid Pyka, Ingrid@ingridpyka.com. That's INGRIDPYKA.com. And this concludes another episode of Business as Unusual. You know you can do it. And as always, regardless of how full or empty your cup is, all you need to do is just drink what's left and what you got and savor that flavor. Thank you for joining us.